Well, I did it. I finally played every Soulsborne game, and now I want to rank them in a tier list. If you want to see my in-depth reviews on each game where I discuss the games much more in-depth and with more nuance, then check those videos out after this one. Also, I stream my entire playthrough of all these games live on Twitch, so if you're interested in that, go follow me on Twitch at itstizzle7 to see me play more games. One thing I should mention is that I have no idea what the story is in any of these games, as it's very obscure and I never looked up any lore videos, so story won't really be taken into account in any of these games. On that note, I am also not into the PvP in the Souls games, so that won't be factored in either. With that out of the way, let's jump into it. We will be doing this list in release order, meaning up first is Demon's Souls. I played the remake on PS5, and some people talk about how it is worse than the OG, and I've heard these arguments, but that doesn't matter. The OG would not have been any better for me, because the things that I hated about this game are very present in that game as well. I really did not enjoy this game at all, and as I played the other games, my hatred for this one only grew more. It was a shit game on its own, but then after playing the rest of the titles, it became even more stark how bad this game is. Shohei Yoshida, who was the head of Sony product development at the time, played the game and said, quote, "When it was close to final, I spent close to 2 hours playing it, and after 2 hours, I was still standing at the beginning of the game. I said, this is crap. This is an unbelievably bad game. So I put it aside." Now, far be it from me to listen to out-of-touch game executives, but this was back in like 2009 when game studios like Sony actually still cared about making good games rather than just making money, and Yoshida does seem like a real one. I wish we had more actual gamers in decision-making roles at game studios instead of retarded business people, but that is a whole different discussion for another video. The point is, as he said, after 2 hours, he was still at the start of the game. Everything in Demon's Souls is designed to be slow and tedious. It's not that it is overly challenging. People can beat the game in under an hour without glitches. You just have to know how to run by enemies and pick up a few key items to absolutely destroy every boss with magic. The whole point of this game is to piss you off. Every enemy is placed in a tight corridor, making it nearly impossible to run around. Because of this, you have to fight them straight up, which normally is not a big deal, but this game has a fucking finite healing system. No Estus flasks, you have to find and use healing grass. This means that half your playthrough will just be farming souls for levels and enemies for grass. The runbacks are easily the worst in the series, so bad that it actually made all future runbacks feel like a cakewalk in my subsequent Souls experiences, so that was at least nice, because truly, nothing touches the tedium of Demon's Souls runbacks. And then you get to the boss, and it's the most unsatisfying boss fight imaginable. All of them just have some stupid gimmick, which makes fighting them a slog if you don't know said gimmick, and piss easy if you do know the strat. The whole game is designed around trial and error, not skill. Every stream, I'd be pissed off and annoyed when I got finished. I could only stomach it for like 5 hours at a time, which, funnily enough, on games that I loved, I could easily spend 10 hours plus in a stream and still not want to get off. The only, and I mean only, redeeming quality about this shit-ass game is that it inspired the Souls genre, and it is proof positive that game studios need to be given some leeway to refine and iterate on their games and ideas. The idea around this game was obviously good because it birthed the Souls genre, which myself and so many others love dearly, but like with many works of art, the first one was a huge miss. My early YouTube videos are woefully bad compared to some of the content I went on to make half a decade later. Everyone has to start somewhere. This is how you learn and grow, and I'm grateful that From Software got more kicks at the can because they knocked it out of the park down the road. But the first iteration was hot garbage in my opinion. The fact it was the genesis for the Souls series is the only thing keeping it out of F tier, so I will place it firmly into D tier. I do not recommend this game to anyone. It's not fun in the slightest. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, it's only onwards and upwards from here. Up next, we have Dark Souls. This is often referred to as Dark Souls 1, but at the time, it was just Dark Souls. My god, what a glow up. First off, this installment introduced the Estus Flask, a massive improvement to healing grass. This allowed you to get all your heals back when you rested at a bonfire. This is critical because it actually promoted beating your head against the wall in a boss fight to figure out how to beat it. In Demon's Souls, I wouldn't do a quote-unquote real attempt until I was sure that I could beat it, so that I didn't risk losing precious healing items. Well, that was done away with here, and I could not be more grateful. Dark Souls 1 has many people's favorite level designs in the entire series, and it's easy to see why. I was dumbfounded when I would come across an area and then realize it looped back on itself and brought you back to somewhere that you'd already been. The interconnectedness of this world is top tier level design. Like, it's so unbelievably good. Yeah, this is... Dude, I didn't even notice that ladder. That is some slick level design. The game features many gank fights, something that were very present in Demon Souls, but unlike Demon Souls, this game actually gives you the option to run by the enemies. Most times, I would go through an area slowly and methodically, taking out every enemy along the way. This would usually wind up in me getting to a boss fight and proceeding to die. But then, on the subsequent run back, I wouldn't have to slog through the area again for 15 minutes just to get to the boss. I could use my movement skill to get by enemies and get back to a boss in just a couple minutes. Sure, sometimes you would die on the way, but on each subsequent attempt, you got better at avoiding taking damage, or you learnt which enemies it was easier to just kill rather than trying to avoid. This made repeat boss attempts much more fun. The bosses were also a massive step up from Demon Souls, allowing players to beat them with a variety of builds, rather than just abusing magic or a gimmick. This meant that a wide array of builds would work, which is awesome because the game has tons of fun weapons to use. However, leveling up those weapons was no easy feat as upgrade materials were not that abundant, so I pretty much just stuck to like 1 or 2 good weapons for an entire playthrough. You also had to go back to different blacksmiths to level up lots of different weapons, which was a bit cumbersome. The game still had a lot of friction at this point, and while some people enjoy that friction, I much prefer the seamlessness that came in the later titles. Sure, it is cool that there is like one vendor that you can buy certain items from, it certainly makes the world feel real, but at the end of the day, I don't want to punch into Google or YouTube where I can buy poison knives or fire bombs. I just want to go to one vendor and be able to buy it, but to each their own. They also don't open up fast travel until quite late in the game. Again, this is great on one hand because it forces players to learn their way around and really interact with the environment, which is awesome because, as I mentioned, this world is crazy interconnected, so it is great to explore and appreciate all that interconnectedness and the hard work the developers put into making it like this. But at the same time, I want my challenge in these games to come from tough boss fights rather than learning my way around, but again, to each their own. They also introduced tons of NPC quests, which were really obscure and complicated to complete, and this would become a staple of all future games. This was honestly a really nice addition. At the end of the day, I absolutely loved my time with Dark Souls. Exploring this world and discovering how it looped back on itself was a pleasant surprise time and time again. There were also tons of cool secrets for the player to discover. I just can't speak highly enough about this game. The boss fights were hyped up a bit too much in my opinion. They weren't overly difficult, but they were still a nice challenge and a big step up from Demon Souls. All in all, I would put Dark Souls 1 in A tier. Next up, the redheaded stepchild of the Souls series, Dark Souls 2. I played the OG, not Scholar of the First Sin, so some things may be a bit different, but overall it seems the same. One difference that I know of is the OG has no shortcut at No Man's Wharf, which would have been really appreciated. You know, honestly, I really don't understand where the hate comes from with this game. I thought it was excellent. I think the biggest issue just comes down to the adaptability stat. Luckily, having waited till 2026 to play this game, people knew this, and some of those people were in my Twitch chat and gave me the heads up on that. As a result, I was able to level it up early and never have to worry about it again. The other issue I hear come up a lot is ganks, and yes, it does have some egregious ganks, but again, coming from Demon Souls, this was nothing. I managed to deal with the usual gank spots that people complain about with relative ease. I understand AI manipulation pretty well, so I knew how to kite and move the right way to not really die to them all that much. Shrine of Amana is one that people often whine about, but you can dodge the magic, and then you just go kill the magic casters so they stop shooting at you. Is it annoying and tedious? Yeah, maybe a little, but again, nothing on the level of Demon Souls, not even close. As such, this was just a minor speed bump. The only bad runback in the game came in the Winter DLC and the Frigid Outskirts. Fuck that runback entirely. Completely obnoxious game design. Once you get through it once, there should be a goddamn bonfire and I'll die on that hill. It's horrible. But aside from that, this game actually has some amazing DLC. It has 3 DLCs in total and they are all very good and some of the best boss fights in the entire series. Sir Alon was the last DLC fight that I did and I'm glad because I friggin' love that fight, so I saved the best for last. Speaking of boss fights, the game has a ton of them, and as someone who played these games to fight cool bosses, this was very much appreciated. Lots of them are pretty underwhelming, so it's a quantity over quality thing, but it's still appreciated. But like I said, it did have some memorable ones sprinkled in there, Looking Glass Knight being super memorable for me. The whole aesthetic of that boss and the environment and everything was just super cool. Speaking of environments, it has some of my favorites in the series. Dragon Aerie is an area that I'll always remember, and Majula, your home base, is probably my favorite home base in the entire series. Firelink Shrine is great as well, don't get me wrong, but Majula really felt like a safe haven in this unforgiving land. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about bonfire aesthetics as well. Probably one of the coolest mechanics in any Souls game, and man do I wish they brought those forward into future titles. What I would give to fight Melania and Radon again without having to start a new game file. Luckily, it exists in Dark Souls 2 and I loved it, so big props there. This game took some chances with new design choices like the adaptability stat that I mentioned. In Majula, you can head out in a few different ways, giving that same freedom of exploration that Dark Souls 1 does. It doesn't have the interconnectedness like Dark Souls 1, but I was fine with that. As a whole, I thought the levels were almost just as good, but it's really hard to top the standouts like Sen's Fortress or Anor Londo, let's be real. But they were fun to explore nonetheless, and the enemy variety was once again top tier. This game also introduced power stancing, and it blended Estus flasks with consumable healing items to get the best of both worlds. This is how it should be done if you're gonna do it. It also gives you fast travel from the start, something that I very much appreciated. It also introduced this annoying lantern mechanic where some areas would be dark and you would have to light them up with fire. I actually thought this made sense and was cool for the gutter, but everywhere else it just sort of felt ham-fisted in and it was more annoying than anything else. Overall, I think Dark Souls 2 does more things right than wrong, and I'm glad they tried so many new and innovative things. I will plant it firmly into A tier. I will even go slightly above Dark Souls 1 if I have to choose, just because it has more bosses, and as I said, my main draw to these games was fun boss fights. Also, I think the DLC is some of the best in the series, so with DLC included, it goes slightly above 1, but both are awesome games. Coming out just a year after Dark Souls 2, we have Bloodborne, many people's favorite of the bunch. They don't call them Soulsbornes for no reason. Tons of people clamor to get a remake of this game, but having played it on PS5, I can confidently say that it does not need one at all. I think the graphics and gameplay hold up just fine in 2026. I would rather see a Bloodborne 2 than a remake of the OG. If Dark Souls 2 is the most overhated in the franchise, then Bloodborne has easily got to be the most overrated. I was so pumped to play this game. So many people told me that it was the best one in the series, and even in my head, before I ever played these games, when I pictured From Software games, Bloodborne is what I pictured. I think it has the absolute coolest aesthetic in the series. The Lovecraftian inspiration oozes into every corner of Bloodborne. The armor sets are so friggin' cool. The weapons are nasty as hell. I use the saw cleaver. Fuck man, you just feel like a badass. I get why people love this game. The world building is 10 out of 10, but as I said, I'm not ranking this on story or lore because I don't know the story and lore, and I don't play these games for the story and lore. I play it for the gameplay, and on paper, I should love this gameplay. It has parries and rewards aggression, so much so that you even can counter an attack with damage of your own to get your own health back. I think that's awesome. But sadly, this game makes the same fatal flaw as Demon Souls and gives you a finite healing system. Before I go off about the healing system, another shitty Demon Souls element that they bring to this game is having to go to the World Hub to fast travel to a new destination, rather than just doing it from bonfires or, in this game, lanterns. It's a small design decision, but one that really rubs me the wrong way. Now, back to finite healing. I fully plan on making a video, and it could already be out by now, on why finite healing is fundamentally bad, but it boils down to two main problems. One, farming for blood vials is an annoying and tedious waste of time when I just want to be exploring this dope-ass world. And two, it discourages experimentation and getting better through practice. Basically, you have two options. Try and take down the boss as quick as possible by any means necessary so that you don't have to keep using vials on subsequent attempts, or do what I did on Bloodstarved Beast and go in there and get as far as you can without using any healing and then retry again. And do this over and over until you're so confident in the fight that you can basically no-hit it. The problem is, this takes a ton of time. Yes, it's satisfying in its own way. Bloodstarved Beast is actually one of my favorite fights in the game because I took the time to master it, but when enemies have multiple phases to their fights, you can't see the later phases, so even practicing this way does not guarantee success. I hate having my time wasted, and every second spent grinding blood vials in this game felt like a waste of time. I don't mind mastering a boss. In fact, I want to play these games to do that, but a finite healing system is at odds with that. As such, this made me not enjoy my time with the game nearly as much as I should have. I felt there was too much time wasting. Next, the bosses themselves. They were extremely lackluster. I much prefer humanoid bosses to beast-type bosses. There are some exceptions. I love Demon of Hatred in Sekiro far more than the average person, and Guardian Ape is dope as hell as well. But Estelle in Elden Ring? Fuck that guy. Well, Bloodborne has mostly beast-type enemies, and I just don't find them fun to fight. Orphan of Kos was actually one of my favorite fights in the game because it's just a challenging battle, but I am not fighting the camera like often happens in beast-style bosses. Honestly, outside of Father Gascoigne and Bloodstarved Beast, I can't even really remember any boss fights without looking them up. Ludwig and Lady Maria are pretty dope, they're in the DLC, but they were at least decently fun. Ligarius was cool, but I had to look up his name because I still couldn't even remember it. Again, remember my biases here. I play these games first and foremost for the bosses, and I found most boss fights to be very underwhelming. A large part of that could just be chalked up to the finite healing. Rather than trying to learn and appreciate the boss, I tried to just brute force it so I wouldn't have to farm more blood vials. That honestly makes me really sad. Speaking of annoying waste of time, holy shit! The Chalice dungeons are so bad. They are monotonous and boring. Much like Demon Souls, the biggest compliment that I can give this is that these were probably the inspiration for Catacombs and Elden Ring, something I enjoyed far more. But in Bloodborne, they just suck. When I play a game, I like to fully complete it and experience everything. I did as much as possible in every FromSoft game that I played. I beat every boss, went to every world, but I drew the line here. They felt too much like a giant waste of time, so I didn't complete them all. Again, I respect my time, and I was just having such little fun with it that I finally threw in the towel. Bloodborne just didn't click with me, and that's okay. I can understand why people love it. Hell, I loved everything about the world as well. It's cool as hell. But for me, it's a C-tier game. I would still recommend people play it to see if it clicks with them, unlike Demon Souls, which is utterly irredeemable in my opinion, but I can't say that I want to play this game again. Much like Demon Souls, every time I ended stream, I was just annoyed and pissy rather than craving to play more, and I honestly think that says it all, as gaming should be fun at the end of the day. Up next, we have Dark Souls 3, and spoiler alert, this was my favorite of the Souls series. Immediately in the first boss fight, I was like, fuck yeah, this is what I've been waiting for. The combat felt much more responsive and fast-paced than the previous titles. The bosses were also quicker, and they make this very apparent in the first fight with Eudix Gundyr. I was blown away right out the gate. This game was the first time where I felt truly challenged by the boss fights. They were a big step up from all the previous games in my opinion. It's not to say the bosses in the other games were bad. Some are great and perfect for the playstyle of those games, but Dark Souls 3 combat and boss fights just really clicked with me. They also finally made attaining boss weapons much more seamless and intuitive, rather than the complex systems that were in the previous titles. This was very welcome. In my review of the game, I said it was the Souls formula perfected. All the tinkering and iteration from the first two games manifested in this game to become the best versions of themselves. Sure, it doesn't quite have the interconnected world like Dark Souls 1, but that never bothered me at all. The levels were still full of branching paths and secrets and fun to explore in their own right. I will say the levels themselves were definitely less memorable than Dark Souls 2 and especially Dark Souls 1. Much like with Bloodborne bosses, I could only name a couple areas off the top of my head, and one is Anor Londo, which is just a reskin from Dark Souls 1, though it's still sick. But it still had moments where the beauty of the world just made you stop and appreciate it. Mostly the entrance to Irithyll of the Boreal Valley. The traversal was also stepped up here, having to navigate down some tricky branches at times, but this was okay because jumping and movement was the best it had been in the series to date, so it wasn't like doing so was a chore. but for me, it's the combat and boss fights that set this game apart from its predecessors. The DLC has some of my favorite boss fights in the entire series, with Slave Knight Gale and Sister Freed among others. Nameless King is also a great fight in the second phase, though first phase has some of that camera jank that I don't like, but I just adore the secret on how to even get to Archdragon Peak. Once again, the game was full of secrets and great enemy variety and obtuse quest design. Super cool. But yeah, for me, the game felt the most fun to play in Dark Souls 3, and that is huge to me as someone who prioritizes fun and crisp gameplay above all else. For that reason, Dark Souls 3 lands at the top of A tier. Next up, we have Sekiro, widely regarded as the toughest FromSoft title in the series, and now having played them all, I would agree. Fun fact, Sekiro is the first FromSoft game I've ever played. I played it a year before beginning my Souls journey. I had heard it was the hardest, so I figured if I could beat it, I could beat any of them. Also, it is the most unlike the others in terms of combat, so since I was a blank slate, I figured it would be best to start with this one before I developed bad habits. That was honestly a great call because even in Bloodborne, which I played after all the Souls games, I would find myself misclicking from time to time just thanks to muscle memory. Thankfully, I streamed my playthrough, so my chatters helped guide me through the NPC quests. Once again, they were obscure as hell, but luckily, I got to see them all. It's the only Souls game that I've platinumed, and I'm so glad that I did. I did every ending, and each playthrough was as fun as the last. Despite this game having by far the least build crafting in the series, I think it's extremely fun to replay. I had so much fun mastering each boss. The boss design is what sets this game apart. Every boss is able to be so well tuned thanks to the aforementioned lack of build crafting, meaning each one is a perfect challenge for your level of where you're at in the game. The posture system is also friggin' brilliant as it rewards aggressive gameplay, something that I very much enjoy. Parrying feels extremely satisfying. I just think from a combat and boss perspective, it's the best game in the series. Again, that tight balancing is exactly what I was hoping for from all these games. That satisfaction of overcoming a tough boss is second to none in Sekiro, because it's the epitome of get good. People use that mantra as a crutch anytime someone criticizes something about these games, and it's super annoying, but Sekiro is one game where that philosophy oozes throughout the game. In Elden Ring especially, you can completely break the sandbox to beat any boss in the game with ease, and I think that is fun in its own right, but no game in the series demands more from the player than Sekiro. You don't just accidentally kill a boss in this game, you must learn its moveset and learn how to deal with it, or you simply won't beat the boss. That is my favorite thing about this game. The world design is once again immaculate, having a lot of the looping back on itself structure that people love in Dark Souls 1. I honestly can't really praise this game enough. It seems like I don't have much to say about it, but that is because the praise for me is the combat and bosses, and the critiques are basically non-existent. I beat this game 5 times, and I loved how each playthrough was easier than the last. Again, this game rewards mastery more than all the others. It's a steep as hell learning curve, but when you learn it, you can comfortably beat the game in a single gaming session, and I think that's awesome. Sekiro is an easy S tier for me. Which brings us to the final game in the series, Elden Ring. I made a 50-minute long review of this game and all that I love about it, and some things that I don't like so much, but it's undeniably a masterpiece. Flawless? No, but absolutely incredible in terms of scope. This game is arguably the easiest of the bunch thanks to all the ways to break the sandbox and leverage items in the game and enemy weaknesses to utterly obliterate even the hardest bosses, but that requires hundreds of hours of experimentation and in-depth knowledge of the game systems. Or you could look up a 10-minute YouTube build video. Regardless, this game is great in the opposite ways of Sekiro, and yet is equally, if not more enjoyable. I praised Dark Souls 3 combat, but the combat in Elden Ring is even better, as after almost 15 years, they finally added a proper jump button. I guess Sekiro has jumps too, but yeah, it feels great in Elden Ring. The open world design makes exploring the world so damn fun and enticing. I was constantly getting sidetracked and happening onto secret places for hours on end, exploring every inch of this vast open world, fighting hundreds of bosses. Sekiro has the best boss quality, but Elden Ring has quantity won by a landslide, and many of them are very good. I complained in my review about the super long boss combos on some fights, but I know it's just an experience. The beauty of these boss fights is there is actually tons of way to sneak hits in and maintain the posture meter on bosses. Sadly, posture is not displayed like in Sekiro with the poise meter, a big missed opportunity in my opinion. But again, this just means that the bosses require more experimentation out of you. I hated the boss weakness gimmick in Demon Souls because it was super poorly implemented. In Elden Ring, I think it's done perfectly. You can beat all the bosses with a soul level 1 character and a club, or just whatever build you're using throughout your playthrough. But you can also leverage sandbox knowledge to beat them in a myriad of ways, not just one or two specific ways like Demon Souls. There's near infinite ways to play this game, so whatever playstyle you enjoy, you can use and make it work for you. Sekiro is super replayable because if you master the combat, then you can just rip through it, but Elden Ring is easily the most replayable in terms of build crafting. I mentioned exploring the world is super rewarding as well, but it's also just fun. The environments are some of the most beautiful biomes I've ever seen in gaming. I praise the level design and environment in every Souls game. Hell, even Demon Souls has some memorable levels, but in this game, it takes it to the next level. So many branching pathways, so many secrets to discover, so many quests to do, so many weapons to use and bosses to fight. This game has thousands of hours of replayability, and while a full playthrough may seem daunting thanks to how big the game is, you can take as long or as short as you like. Speedruns can still be done glitchless in under 2 hours. There are very few single player games with this kind of replayability. I would love to play it in a number of different ways. A soul level 1 run to learn the boss fights in depth. A magic based build rather than strength to use spellcasting rather than big swords. A run where I just try a bunch of builds and to find what works the best on each boss. This would actually be somewhat doable because the game gives you tons of upgrade materials to max out your weapons throughout your playthrough, and you can buy stones and farm souls very easily, or runes as they're called in this game. Bonfires are sites of grace and they are plentiful, and From Software basically made boss runbacks non-existent with Stakes of America, something I appreciate tremendously. I honestly just can't sing the praises of Elden Ring enough. It's an easy S tier in my opinion. I think pound for pound it's better than Sekiro, but I played Sekiro 5 times and Elden Ring only once. I love that I can hop on Sekiro and beat it very quickly, and I love it for its minimalist approach, while conversely, I love Elden Ring for its sheer breadth and depth. Both are equally valid in their own right, so I honestly don't know which one would be my favorite. I love them both for totally different reasons, but there is a reason that they are the only two in S tier. They are the only games that I have a true desire to go back and replay. I would not be opposed to playing any of the Dark Souls games again, but I'm not yearning to play them either. Sekiro and Elden Ring are both games that I would play again and again. I'm not going to for a while because I have so many other great games I want to play, but yeah, in a different world where I had a clone or nothing but time, I would play these games a bunch just because they're so good and so damn much fun to play. I love them. And that is going to do it for the tier list. I was going to wait for the Duskbloods to come out before making this, but no one knows what to expect from that game, and it's switched to exclusive, so I'm not sure how it'll even be. I've been playing some Night Rain as well, and I very much enjoy that game, but it isn't the tight single player game like the others. I really enjoy it as well, and would probably put it in A tier, but again, I think it's too different from the rest for a proper comparison. Anyways, let me know down below your tier list for the Soulsborne games, or anything else Souls game related. Thanks for watching if you're still here, and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.